3:08 p.m. Northern Strait of Hormuz. The heat is oppressive. The sky is cloudless. Visibility stretches 4 miles across flat, shimmering water. Just offshore, a small, rocky island breaks the surface of the Persian Gulf. No civilians, no infrastructure, no strategic value on a map. But everything about it matters. This island controls a narrow maritime corridor. Shipping lanes pass within sight of its shoreline. Every vessel entering the strait is observed from here. And today, it is guarded. A small U.S. Marine detachment occupies the island. Force protection detail. Rotational deployment. Defensive posture only. No artillery, no armor, no airstrip, just Marines, sensors, and communications equipment. They are not here to provoke. They are here to watch. At 3:08 p.m., Iranian coastal radar stations begin active scanning, not routine surveillance. Targeted dead-dem fire control-grade illumination sweeps across the island and the surrounding waters. At the same moment, Iranian naval elements depart multiple small harbors along the coast. Fast attack boats accelerate outward, hugging the shoreline before turning south. This movement is not subtle. It is deliberate. On regional monitoring feeds, analysts recognize the pattern immediately. This is not harassment. This is an attempted seizure. Iran has tested American responses before. Drone flyovers, boat swarms, laser illumination, radio warnings. But today's move is different. Today, Iran is not posturing against a ship. They are moving toward U.S. Marines on land. That distinction changes everything. At 3:10 p.m., Marine sentries on the island receive confirmation. Unidentified fast craft inbound. Multiple contacts. High speed. Rules of engagement shift instantly. Defensive posture becomes locked. Satellite communications remain open. Lift feeds stream back to command centers across the region. Every movement is visible. Iranian commanders believe they have chosen the right moment. Late afternoon. Extreme heat. Limited manpower on the island. They believe the Marines can be overwhelmed quickly. Seize the position. Capture personnel. Force negotiations. Create leverage. They believe escalation can be controlled. They are wrong. What Iran does not see is what has already been activated. Below the water, American submarines reposition quietly. Overhead, surveillance aircraft tighten their orbits. Beyond the horizon, naval strike assets begin moving without announcement. This response is not improvised. It is rehearsed. At 3:12 p.m., U.S. Central Command confirms hostile intent. This confirmation triggers a standing contingency, one that exists for a single reason. Because Marines are involved. The island Marines do not fire. They do not move. They wait. They have been trained for this moment. Their mission is not to defeat the approaching force. Their mission is to hold Antubishan. At 3:14 p.m., Iranian fast attack boats close within visual range. Weapons are visible on deck. Personnel stand exposed. No attempt is made to hide intent. From Iranian command's perspective, speed is everything. They believe if they can reach the shoreline, the situation changes. They believe boots on the island equals control. At 3:15 p.m., the first warning is issued, not by radio, not by flare, by presence. U.S. naval radar emissions intensify across the strait. Electronic signatures appear where none existed minutes earlier. Iranian operators notice immediately. The environment changes. At 3:16 p.m., U.S. aircraft begin entering the airspace. High altitude. Silent. Unannounced. They are not there to strike. Yet, they are there to be counted. The Marines on the island receive a final update. Reinforcements are not coming. Support is... There is a difference. At 3:18 p.m., Iranian boats continue their approach. They are now committed. Turning back would signal weakness. Iranian commanders issue final instructions. Proceed. This is the last moment. Iran controls the timeline, because the moment they cross the next line, the Strait itself becomes part of the response. And the Strait does not forgive mistakes. At 3:19 p.m., authorization is given, not to defend the island, but to secure the water around it. What follows will unfold quickly, and it will not stop until the Strait is no longer contested. By 3:19 p.m., the situation has crossed a threshold. Iranian fast attack boats continue closing on the island in tight formation. Engines at full throttle. Weapons uncovered. No attempt at concealment from the island. Marine observers track every movement. Range markers update in real time. Distances close steadily. Timelines compressed. The Marines do not fire. They are not here to repel a landing alone. They are here to anchor a response. At 3:20 p.m., U.S. Central Command authorizes maritime denial across the surrounding waters. This authorization is not a strike order. It is a control order. Any hostile vessel attempting to reach the island will be stopped. How that happens is left to commanders on scene. At 3:21 p.m., the first American surface combatants begin repositioning. Destroyers and cruisers already transiting the Strait adjust course. Their movements are subtle, but their sensor profiles change instantly. Iranian operators notice the shift. The water around the island begins to feel crowded. At 3:22 p.m., Iranian commanders issue a final instruction to their boats. Increase speed, close distance. Land forces, they believe momentum will override caution. They believe hesitation now would undermine the operation. They do not yet realize that momentum is no longer theirs. At 3:23 p.m., U.S. aircraft descend slightly in altitude. Not enough to strike. Enough to be unmistakable. Their presence is visible from the decks of Iranian boats. Their silhouettes cut across the afternoon sky. This is the last warning. At 3:24 p.m., one Iranian boat breaks formation. Its commander he turns slightly away from the island. That hesitation lasts seconds. Iranian command orders him back into line. The formation resumes. The decision is made. At 3:25 p.m., the first kinetic action occurs, not on the island. On the water, a U.S. destroyer launches a precision strike against a lead Iranian fast attack craft operating well outside the island's defensive perimeter. The strike is controlled. Measuret terminal. The boat explodes in a brief flash. Debris scatters across the surface. Every other vessel in the formation sees it. At 3:26 p.m., Iranian commanders attempt to reframe the situation. They order remaining boats to continue. They assume this is a warning shot. They assume escalation will stop here. They are wrong. At 3:27 p.m., additional strikes follow. Two Amore fast attack boats are neutralized in rapid succession. One disabled, one destroyed. The formation fractures. Some boats slow, others attempt evasive maneuvers. The coordinated advance collapses. At 3:28 p.m., Iranian missile boats farther back begin preparing launch systems. They are still outside effective range. But they intend to change that. At 3:29 p.m., U.S. electronic warfare aircraft activate full-spectrum interference. Iranian targeting radars degrade instantly. Communications between boats become intermittent. Orders arrive late or not at all. The Iranian force is now fragmented. At 3:30 p.m., the Marines on the island receive confirmation. No hostile vessels are within landing range. For the first time since the movement began, the shoreline is secure. But the operation does not pause, because Iran has not disengaged. At 3:31 p.m., additional Iranian naval units attempt to enter the battle space from the north. They are detected immediately, tracked, classified, assigned. At 3:32 p.m., U.S. commanders widen the engagement zone. This is the moment when the focus shifts. The objective is no longer the island alone. The objective becomes the Strait. At 3:33 p.m., long-range precision weapons are launched toward Iranian naval staging areas along the coast. These strikes are not punitive. They are preventative. Facilities that support boat swarms are hit. Fuel depots ignite, launch ramps collapse. The ability to surge additional forces disappears. At 3:35 p.m., Iranian command traffic spikes briefly. 10 drops. 10 drops. Orders contradict each other. Units report confusion. Situational awareness degrades. The attempted seizure has failed. But Iran has not yet accepted that. At 3:36 p.m., the Marines on the island observe a change. Iranian boats begin turning away, not retreating in order, withdrawing unevenly. Some flee at speed, others drift, engines throttled down. This is not a tactical maneuver. This is loss of control. At 3:38 p.m., U.S. aircraft shift, focus from sea to shore. Targeting, data updates. Command infrastructure supporting the operation is identified. The response escalates again. At 3:39 p.m., strikes land inland. Radar nodes collapse. Communications relays fall silent. Observation posts go dark. Iran's ability to coordinate in the Strait diminishes rapidly. At 3:41 p.m., U.S. command confirms the seizure attempt is neutralized. No Marines captured. No hostile presence on the island. No effective Iranian naval force remaining in the immediate area. But the operation continues, because control of the Strait must be restored fully. And Iran has not yet been made to understand that the attempt itself carries consequences beyond failure. By 3:42 p.m., the timeline has shifted irreversibly. Iran no longer decides what happens next. The Strait does. At 3:42 p.m., the scope of the operation widens decisively. What began as an attempted seizure of a small island is now treated as a direct challenge to freedom of navigation across the entire strait. The objective shifts from protection to control. U.S. naval commanders do not announce this change. They execute it. At 3:43 p.m., American surface combatants establish overlapping sensor coverage across the central shipping lanes. Radar horizons expand. Fire control solutions update continuously. Every moving contact in the strait is classified within seconds. The water is no longer neutral. It is governed. At 3:44 p.m., U.S. aircraft move into layered orbits. High-altitude surveillance platforms maintain constant coverage. Lower-altitude strike aircraft reposition, staying just beyond visual range of the coast. Electronic warfare assets maintain pressure, degrading Iranian detection and coordination. Iranian operators attempt to restore radar coverage. It does not hold. At 3:45 p.m., intelligence confirms that Iranian Naval Command has lost real-time awareness of events around the island. Reports from fast attack boats are inconsistent. Location data is outdated. Orders contradict observed reality. The attempted seizure has fractured into isolated decisions. At 3:46 p.m., U.S. forces begin methodical neutralization of remaining Iranian maritime assets capable of interfering with transit. This phase is deliberate. No rushed strikes. No dramatic maneuvers. Targets are selected based on capability, not proximity. Missile-capable vessels are prioritized. Command support platforms are removed. Logistics nodes are disabled. One by one, the tools required to contest the strait disappear. At 3:48 p.m., the first coordinated strike against Iranian naval infrastructure along the coast is executed. Facilities that support boat swarms and missile deployment are hit with precision munitions. Launch ramps collapse. Fuel storage ignites. Communications nodes are rendered inoperable. These strikes are visible from the water. Iranian forces watching from offshore understand immediately what they mean. There will be no second attempt. At 3:50 p.m., the Marines on the island receive updated orders. Remain in place. Maintain observation. No movement. The island is no longer the center of the fight. It is the anchor that triggered it. At 3:51 p.m., Iranian command attempts to reassert control. Emergency communication protocols are activated. Redundant systems are brought online. Orders are issued to consolidate forces farther inland. But consolidation requires time. Time no longer exists. At 3:53 p.m., additional U.S. aircraft enter the region from multiple vectors, not to strike immediately. To close the envelope, Iranian air defense systems attempt to respond. Launch preparations are detected. Those preparations are neutralized before completion. The cycle is broken before it begins. At 3:55 p.m., satellite imagery confirms widespread disruption along Iran's northern coastline. Naval bases show no organized movement. Missile units remain inactive. Support facilities burn or sit dark. The infrastructure required to contest maritime control is no longer functional. At 3:56 p.m., commercial shipping resumes normal spacing through the Strait. Tankers proceed on schedule. Escort requirements are reduced. Insurance risk models adjust downward in real time. The Strait is stabilizing. This matters because the objective was never punishment. It was assurance. At 3:58 p.m., Iranian naval elements that remain afloat withdraw deeper into port. Not tactically, psychologically. They do not attempt to regroup. They do not test the perimeter. They do not probe defenses. They wait. At 4 p.m., U.S. commanders assess the environment. No hostile vessels remain in effective range. No coordinated Iranian naval activity is detected. No immediate threats persist. The Strait is no longer contested. At 4:02 p.m., formal confirmation is issued. The attempted seizure has failed completely. The Marines remain secure. The island remains under observation. The shipping lanes are open, but the operation does not conclude, because the message has not yet fully landed, and Iran has not yet accepted the cost of the attempt. At 4:03 p.m., authorization is granted for the final phase, not to escalate further, but to finalize control. What follows will not be dramatic. It will be decisive, and when it ends, the Strait will no longer be in question. At 4:03 p.m., the final phase begins quietly. There is no announcement, no visible surge of force, no dramatic shift in posture. From the outside, it appears as if the situation has already stabilized. Inside command networks, the reality is different. U.S. naval and air commanders transition from reactive control to sustained denial. The goal is no longer to stop an attack. The goal is to ensure that no follow-on attempt can be mounted. At 4:04 p.m., electronic suppression expands across remaining Iranian military frequencies in the region, not jamming in bursts. Continuous denial. Radars that briefly flicker back online are immediately suppressed. Communications links that attempt to reroute fail to backup systems respond inconsistently, then stop responding at all. For Iranian units along the coast, the environment becomes unpredictable. Orders arrive garbled or late. Data feeds contradict visual reality. Situational awareness collapses. At 4:06 p.m., U.S. commanders authorize selective strikes against residual command support infrastructure. Not large installations, not bases. Smaller relay facilities. Mobile coordination vehicles, secondary logistics nodes that allow units to regroup. Each strike removes a capability rather than a symbol. Each action narrows Iran's options further. At 4:08 p.m., Allied intelligence confirms a critical shift. Iranian Naval Command has ceased issuing coordinated instructions. Local commanders are acting independently. Some units remain in port. Others prepare to move but do not receive confirmation. This fragmentation is decisive, because a fragmented force cannot challenge a strait that demands coordination. At 4:10 p.m., the Marines on the island receive a new update. The threat environment has degraded significantly. No hostile movement detected within extended range. No indicators of renewed landing attempts. They remain in position, observing. Their role is unchanged. Their significance has increased. At 4:12 p.m., commercial traffic through the Strait increases to normal density. Tankers move steadily through designated lanes. Support vessels resume escort patterns. Maritime traffic control systems show no anomalies. The Strait is functioning. This is not incidental. It is confirmation. At 4:14 p.m., Iranian coastal defenses attempt one final reset. Short-range radars power up briefly. Communications spikes appear on monitoring screens. They last less than a minute. Targeting solutions never complete. Systems fall silent again. This attempt marks the last measurable effort to reassert control. At 4:16 p.m., U.S. forces begin a controlled drawdown of visible presence. Some aircraft exit forward orbits. Surface combatants maintain coverage but reduce maneuvering. This is not disengagement. It is confidence. Dominance no longer requires demonstration. At 4:18 p.m., Iranian State Command issues an internal directive. It is not an order to counterattack. It is not a declaration of resistance. It is an instruction to stand down. The directive is fragmented, delayed, unevenly received, but its intent is clear. At 4:20 p.m., Allied monitoring agencies confirm the same conclusion independently. No Iranian naval units are preparing to sortie. No missile systems are repositioning. No command networks are coordinating movement. The attempt has ended, not in negotiation. In silence, at 4:22 p.m., U.S. Central Command formally assesses the Strait as secure. The designation is procedural, but the implication is strategic. Control has been restored without occupation, without prolonged engagement, without escalation beyond necessity. At 4:24 p.m., the Marines on the island receive confirmation. No extraction planned. No redeployment ordered. They will remain. Their presence continues to serve its purpose. At 4:26 p.m., Iranian naval forces retreat deeper into harbor, not under pursuit, not under fire. Under understanding. They do not probe, they do not test, they do not challenge. At 4:28 p.m., the final systems check is completed. No hostile emissions detected, no movement requiring response. The Strait is stable. At 4:30 p.m., the meaning of the previous 82 minutes becomes clear. Iran did not fail because it lacked boats or weapons. Iran failed because it attempted to turn a localized seizure into leverage against a system built to prevent exactly that. The system responded. And it did not blink. The attempted seizure did not change the balance in the Strait. It clarified it. By 4:31 p.m., the Strait of Hormuz is quiet again. Not empty, not abandoned, just orderly. Commercial vessels continue their transit on schedule. Tankers pass through the shipping lanes under clear skies. Navigation systems report no anomalies. Insurance rates remain unchanged. Markets remain steady. For global commerce, nothing appears to have happened. That is the point. Inside Iran, the response is delayed and restrained. State media does not immediately acknowledge the attempted seizure. Initial messaging avoids details. No images are released. No claims of success are made. The tone is defensive, cautious, vague. That silence carries more weight than any statement, because silence means options are gone. Regional partners take note. Naval coordination increases quietly. Intelligence sharing deepens. Patrol schedules adjust. No emergency summits are called. No declarations are issued. The region stabilizes without spectacle. Strategic analysts begin reviewing the sequence. The engagement did not unfold as a battle. It unfolded as a boundary enforcement. Iran attempted to seize U.S. Marines guarding a small island. The objective was leverage. The method was speed. The assumption was hesitation. None of those assumptions held. The timeline is precise. At 3:08 p.m., Iranian forces initiated movement toward the island. At 3:10 p.m., Marines confirmed inbound hostile craft. At 3:19 p.m., authorization shifted from defense to control. By 3:25 p.m., Iranian boats were neutralized before reaching shore. By 3:42 p.m., the operation expanded from the island to the Strait. By 4:02 p.m., Iranian maritime coordination collapsed. By 4:22 p.m., the Strait was formally assessed as secure. Total elapsed time: 44 minutes. No Marines were captured. No foothold was gained. No leverage was created. Instead, Iran lost freedom of action across the strait it had attempted to exploit. This outcome was not accidental. It was the product of doctrine, layered surveillance, forward presence, immediate escalation control, capability removal instead of punishment. The Marines on the island were not bait. They were the tripwire, and once triggered, the response moved faster than Iran could adapt. What followed was not a demonstration of firepower alone. It was a demonstration of denial. Iran was denied the ability to land, denied the ability to regroup, denied the ability to escalate, denied the ability to shape the narrative. In modern maritime conflict, denial is decisive. By nightfall, Iranian naval units remain in port. Missile deployments remain static. Command traffic remains minimal. The attempted seizure is not repeated. Not the next day, not the next week. The Marines remain on the island. They continue their mission. They continue their watch. Their presence did not invite escalation. It prevented it. The Strait of Hormuz remains open for the same reason it always has. Not because threats are ignored, but because attempts to enforce them fail quickly. At 3:08 p.m., Iran believed it could change the equation by seizing a small position guarded by a handful of Marines. At 3:52 p.m., 44 minutes later, the equation was settled. The island remained secure. The Marines remained free. The Strait remained open, and Iran learned. Once again, that control of the world's most important waterway does not come from proximity. It comes from dominance. This was not a war, it was a test, and the test ended the moment it was attempted.